All right, call this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. We have our roll call, please.
Reverend Eilert.
Here.
Mrs. Jernick.
Here.
Mrs. Mangan.
Here.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Here.
Mrs. Washburn.
Here.
Thank you. Next we have the adoption of the agenda, and we're actually going to, we just have a couple of items on the agenda. We're going to move our two discussion pieces, or the discussion topics and board resolutions. We're going to flip those, so 3.1 will come before 2.1 on our agenda. Any other adjustments to make? We have a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Jernick.
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes. Thank you. Then we need to approve our minutes from the January 20th board business meeting.
February 20th.
I'm sorry, February 20th business meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have roll call, please.
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Mrs. Jernick.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, so then we're moving on to the approval of the second reading of the OSBA policy. We had some significant discussion at a work session here in this room. At our last meeting, we presented them as a first reading. I've not seen any comments from the public. Has anyone had anything else that's been brought up to them by anyone? So I think we did have a couple of the amendments that were made by council from the first work that we had done, and I think Dr. Policy, anything in addition that?
Well, I wanted to make sure that anybody who wants access to the policies knows where they will live and how to access them. We're now updated. We haven't formally completely switched over yet, correct? So we need to approve them before we switch. So these policies aren't live for people to review.
We gave them the link
Right.
at the last meeting, so
We
people
did.
could go in and.
And then if somebody
review
wants
them.
can we just reassess, like if you wanted to look at it, cause I have the link, it's in the meeting agenda. If anybody wants to look at it, you can click on it and it's there. It's still under draft manual for consideration, but it will become, as soon as it's approved, our only manual. And then we had talked about keeping the old one, in the file cabinet someplace, in case anybody wanted to go back to compare the old and the new.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing this up as a conversation just so if anybody that's listening or chooses to look at our policies, they're currently available through a link in this meeting's agenda. And then once we vote on them, they will become the only policies that are available.
I guess it's probably also helpful for the public to know that the reason we're doing this at a work session instead of our next meeting is that handoff electronically, because one contract is ending with Neola as we move over to OSBA. So in order to make that handoff successfully, we need to do that at this meeting instead of at the actual policy meeting.
Good summary. Does anyone talk about policy again?
We will, but not tonight.
Yeah, that's right. We
Great.
do have our list of ones that we want to, we'll need to work on that next to think about which meetings we want to take on which policy topics so that we can have a more extensive conversation about some of those things and bring in some other resources.
Perfect.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the second reading and adoption of the OSBA policies?
So moved. Second.
We have a roll call, please.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Mrs. Jernick.
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Approved. The next thing on our agenda is our discussion topic. Andy Dickerson is going to be with us from the Cardinal Land Conservancy. And he was running out to his car to get something else for his presentation. So hopefully we will have him here with us in a second. And I don't know if there's anything else, Mike, that you want to say in preparation of that, or we just
Yeah,
vote?
it's, we appreciate Andy being here to present to us what Cardinal Land Conservancy is and kind of what their mission and vision is for Loveland as well, so.
I know that Andy was
I'm gonna check on
making a last minute change to the presentation, and said that he wanted to do a new slide. So Andrew just went to go check on him. Otherwise, this is, I told him, I'm like, oh, you have plenty of time, don't worry about it. Change your slide. Perfect,
Andy is, again.
okay.
Great, thank you.
And I don't think I've ever had an agenda that was that short.
Yeah. Doesn't always mean quick.
All right, Andy, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
We're gonna invite you up now to do a presentation for the board, and you know, I've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit and to hear all of the great things that the Cardinal Conservancy is doing, so thank you for being with us tonight, and look forward to your presentation.
My pleasure. So I'm just here to tell you guys a little bit more about Cardinal and who we are and what we've got planned for what we're gonna do in Loveland.
Great.
So for those that don't know, I'm the executive director. I'm the first executive director of Cardinal, started 8 years ago. And we're a growing nonprofit land trust, working in Southwest Ohio. And this is what we do. We preserve natural habitats, waterways, and productive lands. So that is green space, open space, and environmentally sensitive agriculture. We protect over 10,000 acres right now. 9,000 of those are easements, and 1,000 we own outright. So when we get involved with property, we're serious about it. We're a nationally accredited land trust, so that's like the Better Business Bureau's seal of approval for land trusts. We have the governance, finance, policy, procedures all in place to last forever. I always qualify that by saying as long as there's a stock market and Ohio's a state. Cardinal and Loveland. So what we're involved with is owning property that's on the east side, and we're getting what's all in a black outline here. And we've got big plans for the stuff that's in the red outline. That includes a trail, a couple of pond enhancements, and a bigger plan for up here where the buildings are.
For people that are watching, St. Columban is down there on the bottom corner as a point of reference for where in Loveland.
Yeah, St. Columban Children's Meeting House is right across the street with the grant office. So what we're looking to do is you know, I have some really great staff that work for us. And one is that he's the avian ecologist, he's the best birder in the region. He's grown up leading all the bird counts. So what we wanted to do is focus a piece of this property to show people how they can use native plants to attract not just people, but nature. And we're going to restore forest with native trees. We're going to restore prairie. We're going to have a trail through both of those. And where they come together, we're looking to plant a sound garden. So we're going to use these plants to attract insects that, you know, fill the night with sounds. We already have that, but we want to be intentional about how we attract and the diversity of species that we get. Included with that is, in the sound garden, is birds. So we want to attract a lot of variety of birds, and migratory birds and birds that live here. And the way to do that is looking at invertebrates like lepidopterans, so caterpillars of moths and butterflies. We know what the host plants are, we know where they feed and the nectar providers, and we're going to, again, stick with natives and do a restoration out there so that people can come and enjoy this and then go back home and do it. At the same time, we're going to have a little mini part up front. So this is the front of the property on O'Bannonville Road. We are going to focus our grounds on a visitor experience for hikers and visitors. Again, a moth plant garden, a food thicket, a food arboretum, and this is something that I have college-age kids, and what they like to do when they go hiking is find something to eat that's wild. Like, they call it foraging. So who knew that people did that too? We're gonna have that prairie and sound garden, a native lawn. We're gonna hopefully continue to enrich our relationship with the city of Loveland to show an alternative to a fescue desert for a lawn, and just have some native plants that can still be aesthetic to the community. And we will have some hardscape for parking and meeting space for tables, and then building some parking. The part that we're interested in working with you guys on is this piece that's on Route 48. It's, 15.7 some acres, and for us, it's the least ecologically valuable piece. We're trying to pay attention to where species are and where they'll go, and this one is not that attractive for some of the species. And quite frankly, we're gonna need to sell this piece so we can operate the rest of the property and achieve the goals that we want in terms of developing it. So again, we've grown our partnerships as we've worked through the process. We had to get support from the city, from the township, from the county. That all came together, and then we had to apply for the grant and compete with everyone else applying for the grant. We did that, and it happened to be a boom year where they had enough money to fund this project, and that usually is not the case. So we ranked out, we got awarded funding, and now we're moving forward. So it's rewilding, starting with a 2-mile trail, restoring that pond and allowing fishing. That's gonna be huge for us to interact with everyone in the community. We wanna work with the public to restore and utilize the buildings. And again, work with health practitioner community to treat people with nature. We know the science behind kids' exposure to green space and increase in IQ. And we also know that, and there's data that's published data that relates teens and adults' exposure to green space to treatment for mental health disorders. So we just want to drive that home at a time when it's challenging, especially for young adults. We see with the lawsuits with Facebook and Instagram and Google, it's real. I've got firsthand experience with that. So we really want to see what we can do here to help young people get exposure to nature, to show that they have a way to deal with problems that they might encounter instead of trying to figure it out. They've got something to fall back on. So that's it.
What I heard you saying, we appreciate you presenting, what I heard you saying is this piece of property, whether it be Loveland City School District or some other entity, that monetary value is what you're gonna be using to operate the other part of the conservancy. So whether it be the districts or some other entity, that is certainly what funds you need to operate.
That's right, and we're not, we're not desperate, but we need to sell this, and we're gonna sell it. And, my view and our board is we want it to be you guys. We do have a couple other folks that we've spoken to, but everything's on hold till we figure if you guys want it or not. Thanks.
And from the city perspective, is there water and sewer that's ready for that land as well?
So we are working with the city, and if you see this little maroon line here, the city really wants a water line to go through to give them a closed loop to help them serve the community better. And we're gonna work with the city to make sure they get that water line that goes through.
The other part I hear you saying is, in terms of educational opportunities for our kids, and if there's a nature trail, if there's ponds, and you had spoken about mental health through nature, it would provide an opportunity educationally for our students as well.
So the education component is huge for me. We've got, I've got personally a lot of experience with working with Valley View as a board member for 20 years at Milford, partnering with teachers at an elementary school that borders the property to get kids outside, to show them tracks, show them signs of animals, to show them the tree identification guides. And working with one teacher there, she put together a K-8 curriculum that anyone can use to get outdoors and you know, it's ready to go and be shared.
Well, we're really thrilled that you came to us to have this discussion, certainly before you looked at other opportunities to sell that property, because it is such a great opportunity, I think, potentially for us as a district to acquire property within our district, which is always challenging, particularly in a large chunk like that, and also the kind of partnership and synergy that we could have there working with the Conservancy, with kids is just something that I think is a great opportunity that it's important for us to explore. We've had some conversations with Andy over the last few months thinking about this, and one of the things that we wanted to make sure, because we're so focused on our relationship with the community, the support they gave us in the last levy, and knowing that we're still operating, you know, on a pretty significant razor thin margin in terms of what we're trying to do to preserve our operating funds. We wanted to make sure that we could have the potential for purchasing property without touching our operating funds, knowing that our operating funds will be continuing to be our emphasis in these coming years. And so I don't know if you want to say, Mr. Espy, anything about what you've done in terms of looking at the potential of financing as we think about this project.
Yeah, thank you very much. You kind of took the words out of my mouth when it comes to staying away from the operating funds, and I believe we could utilize permanent improvement funds. We've been doing a lot of work lately on an updated forecast, worked with Mr. Ames and making sure we're looking at all of our capital expenditures. We also have some debt that falls off of the permanent improvement fund that, you know, would allow the district to be able to finance a purchase of this land potentially if you so chose to do so without touching operating funds.
Yeah, I mean, I would just reemphasize that the community's hopefully heard us say that from an operating perspective, our priorities are the reading intervention, the ELL support we've had, continuing to look at class sizes, and then, you know, the career and technical readiness, like those are our priorities, and they will continue to be our operating priorities. And should we do this, it's out of that permanent improvement.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
to your point on those other items, those are part of the five-year
Right,
forecast.
right.
It's updated, it'll be presented in May, but yeah, any kind of expense for this would be outside of the operating funds, and that would be my recommendation going forward.
So I have a quick question. For those who may not know where permanent funds come from, is there something you could say, share to the public about that?
Yeah, so permanent improvement funds, we have a permanent improvement levy that's funded through property taxes. And so there's income that continues to come into that, and it's specifically for the upkeep of land or items typically that last over 5 years. You know, this would obviously meet that threshold. So it's essentially a pot of money that has to be spent a certain way, and it's a lot more restrictive than our operating funds are.
Okay.
So when I do the 5-year forecast, I'm forecasting the operating funds or the general fund.
Mhm.
So this would be in a separate pool of money
Right.
outside of that.
But we also have been doing forecasting for the PI fund to make sure that this expense would fall within what we need to do for other building
Right.
maintenance and stuff.
Right.
Correct. I mean, obviously, we have a lot more details to work
Yeah.
through, but, you know, I feel like we'll be able to
Mhm.
utilize the fund that way if you so choose to do that as a board.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Andy, for being here with us and for presenting tonight. We want to go into executive session now to consider the purchase of property for public purposes. We need a motion and a second to do so.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to go into executive session, consider the purchase of property for public purposes. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eiler,
Yes?
Mrs. Janik,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchman.
Yes.
And at 6:22.
All right, so we will, going into executive session at 6:22, and we will return to our public session at the end to adjourn the meeting.
Great. Andy, thanks for coming, I really appreciate it.
No,
I
thank
was
you.
Thank
looking
you.
at that map.
Yes.
We're recording.
We are coming back into session at 7:26 PM. We are coming out of our executive session that we went into to consider the purchase of property for public purposes. We do not have any action to take this evening, but we did think it was important to give the public an update on some of our discussion after hearing a presentation from Cardinal Conservancy about the potential purchase of property. We are considering the purchase of these 16 acres as a strategic investment without using any of our operating funds. We are only considering it because we are able to service the financing of the purchase with our permanent improvement fund. We feel that the property will continue to grow in value, support the development of the conservation district for use of the whole Loveland community, and provide unique opportunities for outdoor education for our children. After our discussion tonight, the board is continuing to consider the purchase of this property. In terms of future building on the property, the community's support of our operating fund remains our top priority. There would be no immediate plans for building. The purchase of the property would provide the flexibility to take our time for the community to determine what we want to do with our facilities to best serve our students and minimize the increased tax burden on our citizens. We plan to reconvene at our next meeting to continue the discussion, hear from the community during public participation, consider a financing plan funded by PI funds from our treasurer, and then consider all of these factors as we make a final determination on whether to purchase the property. I think that's all we need to say for this evening, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Our meeting is adjourned at 7:28 PM.